Susan.
Okay, right. We're being recorded, y'all, so hope that's okay with everybody. I'm glad to see everybody today on a cooler Saturday afternoon. I thought some of you might take advantage of this little cool snap and get outdoors. So we'll talk about some Ozark critters and then give y'all a chance to go out and hunt for them, perhaps. Like Corey said, I'm newly retired. I was the outreach coordinator at the Shiloh Museum for 27 years and loved every minute of it right up until the minute I left there. So I'm happy to be able to still talk about Ozark history and folkways, which is something near and dear to me. Now, having said all that, I may be a little rusty on doing a Zoom program, so I know Corey's going to hold my hand through it. And now but I'll ask y'all for y'all's patience. Let me share my screen and we'll get going here. Start program, where is that? Let me move that. Don't look at my pictures yet because I don't want y'all to see those yet. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now, everybody see? Are we good, Corey? Can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so I know the summer, and I'm happy and interested to see that most of the folks attending are adults. That tells me that you're all kids at heart, and that you're interested in the summer reading program topic of tales and tales. So tales as in a tail wagging and tales as in folklore. And you know, these old Ozark hills are full of both kinds of tales. This is one of my favorite pictures of the Ozarks. I just think it's very evocative of the old nature of the hills themselves, of the stories that reside in those hills. And so much of what we know about the old ways comes from this fellow, Vance Randolph, who was a folklorist. Most of y'all that I'm seeing, that I recognize a lot of your names here, so I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. Most of y'all have heard of Vance Randolph, the great Ozark folklorist from Pittsburgh, Kansas, who spent his entire life living and traveling among the people in the Ozarks, gathering up their folk songs and stories and riddles and superstitions. He made it his life's work to document the lore of the Ozark, traditional Ozark folks, and he purposely sought out the oldest people as far back in the hills and hollers as he could get, and wrote several books on Ozark folklore. And that's a really special thing to have, because folklore is an oral tradition. Oral as in you hear it, oral as in you speak it. So it's often folklore is not captured on the written page. And once it's captured, it really kind of changes. You really want it to keep the tradition of being handed down orally, because then it stays alive in a way. Once it's on a page, we're all reading the same version of a story or of a riddle or a superstition, or playing music, as in Jerry Hogan's family, the great Hogan family of folk musicians. Once you capture it and put it on a page, it kind of stays static. But when it's left to be told and shared, it can change every time, which is a beautiful thing about folklore. Just as a side note, just to explain what Vance Randolph has written in this photograph, he has sent this to his wife, Mary Celestia Parler, who was a folklorist and English professor at the University of Arkansas. And he has just said, "Dear Mary Celestia, the one at the left is me, as always, Vance." So one of the books that Vance Randolph wrote is this one, "We Always Lie to Strangers, Tall Tales from the Ozarks." And what he's referring to in the title is, there was a time in the early to mid, well, and even still today, 1900s, even into today, that the Ozarks was a great tourist destination, regionally, especially for people from Kansas City and St. Louis, Little Rock, the big cities in our region, who wanted to come and get away this, what they perceived was a place where time stood still, where you could go back and see how you're and be immersed in a way of life that your ancestors knew. And the local folks caught on to this pretty quick, that tourism was big money, especially fishing guides. There were lots of guided fishing trips that you could come down and take part in. And a lot of folklore sprang up about the folklore that was being told to the tourists. Like the city slickers would come in and the old local folks would tell them these fantastic folk tales. And then sometimes those stories would even make it back to newspapers like the Kansas City Star or the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and they'd get printed as these Ozark stories that people in the Ozarks really believed. And it kind of lent more to our stereotype of us ignorant hillbillies that lived an isolated way of life. And of course, that's not true. But you know, we knew that tourism is a good moneymaker. So in one way, we kind of did outwit the folks who came here to spend their money and have a vacation, and we end up putting that money in our pockets. And if telling a tall tale or two helped business, why so much the better. So there's a whole chapter in Vance Randolph's book, We Always Lie to Strangers, on fabulous Ozark monsters. And that's what I want to share with you today, playing off of the summer reading program theme of Tales and Tales. So as we're traveling in these old Ozark hills, what fantastical Ozark critters might we see? Now, as you can imagine, there are no photographs of these critters. There are very few drawings of these critters. So that's a problem for me. When I do programs, I really love to do visuals to give y'all something to look at, so you don't just have to look at and listen to me. So what I did was enlist the help of a good friend of mine, a 10-year-old by the name of Hiatt Lowrey, who is a great artist, I think. And I gave him the descriptions as Vance Randolph recorded them from the old time Ozarkers. I gave him a list of 9 fantastical Ozark critters and challenged him to create his own drawings of these creatures. So what we're going to see today are fantastical Ozark critters for the first time ever. This is a world premiere as seen through the eyes of Hiatt Westlake Lowrey. All right, so let's get started. So we'll start with the wiffle bird. Now again, these are all fantastical creatures purported to live in the Ozarks that Vance Randolph was told about from local folks. And then Vance Randolph wrote these down and compiled them in his book, We Always Lie to Strangers. So here's the description of wiffle bird. He flies backwards to keep the dust out of his eyes. And some folks say that he does that because he doesn't care where he's going, but he wants to see where he's been. He's more interested in where he's been than where he's going. So there's our wiffle bird of the Ozarks. And as we're looking at these, I just want you to think of the young, since it looks like mostly adults here, think of the young people in your life. And I'm just amazed that I took a description from a book written in the 1930s of creatures that Vance Randolph learned about from old timers who were in their 80s in the 1930s. So he's talking to elders of the Ozarks. And here we are in 2021 with those descriptions being created by a 10-year-old today. It just shows the power of a folk tale, of a folk tradition, and how we never really outgrow those. They're just kind of timeless. So the wiffle bird. I don't know if Hiatt is on here, but Hiatt, if you are watching and want to chime in and say anything about your descriptions, feel free. Can you, if that happens, Corey, how do we? It's Paul Lowrey. Look.
Yeah, we're unmuted.
Okay, good. Is Hiatt here?
Yep.
Okay, Hiatt. Well, if you want to say anything, Hiatt, you please do. There is one of your drawings that I do want you to talk a little bit about, if you don't mind. Okay. All right. The next bird, the galupus. The galupus is a big black eagle that nests on the bluffs. And think about all the bluffs along the rivers here in the Ozarks. The galupus must have been must be, because I'm not saying he's extinct, must be a pretty common bird here in the Ozarks. Here's the thing about a galupus. He lays square eggs. Adapted that the galupus has adapted to laying square eggs because regular oval eggs will just roll off the bluff out of the nest and break open before they have a chance to hatch. So you see the galupus has evolved to adapt to the Ozark bluffs. You see our square eggs right there that are happily in the nest. This is one of my favorites. This is the whangdoodle. Whangdoodle is a lizard. There are several lizard type monsters in the Ozarks. The whangdoodle is a lizard that looks like a common lizard called the collared lizard, or commonly in the Ozarks, it's the mountain boomer. Except here's the difference. With a whangdoodle, has a body and tail that is longer than a well rope. Now think about that. In the old days, you would understand how long that was, because you didn't have water from a faucet. You went out to the well and lowered that well bucket down, down. So you knew that a well rope, when you say something's longer than a well rope, that's really long. So you see, here's the tail of the whangdoodle kind of coiled up. And he also is purported to be 14 hands high. Now, in the old days, that would mean something to you, because that's how you measure the height of a horse. So you could say, you think of the size of a horse and know that the whangdoodle is as tall as a horse and as long as a well rope. That's a big, big creature. He's strong enough to tear down fences and pull up little trees, but he's not a bloodthirsty beast. And a lot of these Ozark fantastical creatures are not violent creatures, at least not toward humans, unless they're provoked. But for the most part, just are living in the Ozarks, doing their thing. A gollywog is another kind of amphibious type creature, kind of a salamander. It's 8 or 10 feet long and big as an alligator. Now, a gollywog spends most of its time underwater and in the water and only moves around at night. That's when it's very active. And a gollywog's main business, according to Vance Randolph, seems to be to destroy fishing tackle, especially trot lines. And trot lines are, those, not a fishing pole, but a line that's set out and baited that a fisherman will then come back and check every so often. So I'm wondering if the gollywog also there was a lot of illegal fishing back in the old days. It was not legal to do certain kinds of fishing at night. And I wonder if the gollywog was kind of an underwater policeman to keep us humans honest. You see in this picture that that fisherman knows that the gollywog is messing with his boat, and he's saying, "I'm going down." So that fisherman knows that he is about to encounter a gollywog. Now, this is a gallywampus. So we just had gollywog. Now we've got gallywampus. Gallywampus is a panther-like creature that swims in the water like a mink. So think of a mink or an otter, and then size that up to the size of a panther, and you have a gallywampus. Now, gallywampus only goes after livestock like horse or cows, sheep, pigs, maybe. They never attack humans unless they're provoked. And you see in this picture of Hiatt's that you've got 4 people there trying to decide, let's go after it. No, that's not a good idea. That's a bad idea. No, that's a good idea. So you see these 4 humans are trying to figure out, do they go after the gallywampus or do they leave it alone? Which is a kind of a cautionary tale for us humans today. Do we live with our friends in nature, or do we go after them? And what are the consequences of our decisions there. Hiatt, am I doing okay? Anything you want to say yet? Okay. Snoffus, this is one of my favorites, a snoffus. Snoffus is an albino-like deer creature, so all white. And you see the red eyes because albinos have red eyes. So you see the snoffus up in the trees. And that's because he flies through the treetops at night. And some people have heard him call out. The snoffus, when he's flying through at night, will call out, hallelujah. That's the call of a snoffus. Y'all practice with me, hallelujah. So you maybe can call one in at night, kind of like you might call in a hoot owl. A snoffus is not dangerous at all, but it cannot be seen by most ordinary humans. You see in this picture of Hiatt's that there's even a fellow with binoculars and he can't see it. So the snoffus is there, yet invisible to humans, but you can always hear its call of hallelujah. Okay, Hiatt, this is the picture that I maybe love the best, that if you want to talk about it, I would love for you to. The whistling woohoo is a supernatural cyclone, a wind like a tornado. It looks like a tornado, but it's really a demon. And you see over here on the left, there is the whistling woohoo in his, he loves wreaking havoc and causing destruction, just taking up everything in its path. So Hiatt, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this picture as much as I probably should have. Can you just give us a little explanation of what's going on here?
So the whistling woohoo is trying to destroy this house and flip all these upside down trees. And there's all these tires that are flying around. In that car, it's a fancy fire truck car. The fireman was trying to put down the house that the whistling woohoo put on fire, but then it lost his wheels and he's flying away, but he still managed to put down some of the water. Over there to the left, there's a dog stuck in the tornado, and there's a police car trying to shoot it because they think it's a living thing, but it's no use.
Thank you. Hiatt, it is a fabulous, fabulous drawing. Maybe my favorite. It's hard for me to pick, but this may be my favorite of all the ones that you'd created. How long, Hiatt, can I ask you a question? How long did it take you to once you read about a whistling woohoo, how long did it take you to come up with this idea, this concept for your picture?
I thought of stuff, like it took me about 30 minutes.
Okay.
I kept thinking, and I kept adding to it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Love it. Whistling woohoo. And you know what? We might have some wind. They're talking like we might have some windy weather tonight. So y'all need to kind of be on the lookout. Is it actually a storm front coming through tonight, or is it perhaps the whistling woohoo coming through tonight? The high behind. The high behind is a lizard as big as a bull. So think of that, whose hind legs are 10 times longer than its front legs. Now, the high behind does like to eat humans.
That's my favorite one.
Isn't it beautiful? The colors are fantastic. So the high behind comes out at night, and you see there's the moon, so we know it's nighttime. And he waits on trails. He waits on trails that he knows humans are going to be traveling on. And according to Vance Randolph's old people that he interviewed, when a high behind catches a human, he'll lap them up like a toad frog catching flies. So you see, there's the high behind sticking his tongue out to catch that poor human that's going to be a nice midnight snack for the high behind. And you can imagine in the old days, folks coming back maybe from a square dance or a play party, walking on a moonlit trail or an old dirt road like we looked at, and thinking about the high behind, and maybe if you're adults and you're wanting to or have a good time with the kids, you know, kids love scary stories. A lot of kids do. So you might stop on that old trail and talk about the high behind under the light of the moon, a great Ozark tradition. And then the side hill hoofer. The side hill hoofer looks like a beaver. It's about the size of a small cow, lives in a burrow, in a hole on a steep hillside, and he always runs around the hill in the same direction. And that's because the legs on one side of his body are longer than those on the other side of his body. So his legs are not the same side. That means he can only run around a hill. He has two big grab hook claws on his tail. You can see him there. So that's so he can hang on the hillside when he needs to rest. Now, if by accident the side hill hoofer falls off the hillside that he lives on and he's down on the flat part of the ground, you can capture him very easily because he can't move, because he can't walk on level ground, because his legs are two different sizes. So that's when if you want to approach a side hill hoofer, you need to do it when they're on flat land. Now, they are vegetarians, so they don't eat meat of any kind. The female lays the eggs that are supposed to be as big as water buckets. So again, think of a bucket of water that you might carry from the well, how big a bucket would be. That's the size of a side hill hoofer leg. Now, or egg. Now I said that they won't attack you, but if they're provoked, if they're protecting their babies or their other members of their side hill hoofer family, if you start messing with them, they will attack. But it's easy to escape from one. If you're on a hillside and find yourself under attack by a side hill hoofer, all you have to do is walk straight uphill or straight downhill, because the side hill hoofer can only go around the hillside, again, because its legs are different sizes. So it's pretty easy to steer clear of the side hill hoofer, and maybe even get a look at one if you're on the hillside. You see this person here is going, your move. So he knows he's okay as long as he stays on either side of the hillside with the side hill hoofer, on either side of the side hill hoofer's trail. Hiatt, what I loved in this picture is the hoot owl that you included that's kind of watching over everything. Because you know, hoot owls are kind of like that. They see everything that's going on. So those are the creatures, the fantastical Ozark critters that I asked Hiatt to illustrate for the talk. There is one more beast that there is an actual drawing of that I did not ask Hiatt to draw this one. And I think he would have done a much better job than the picture that ran in the Arkansas Gazette newspaper. This is an actual photograph or picture purportedly taken from a photograph of a goro that was supposedly captured and killed in 1897 in Searcy County, Arkansas. So that's east of Harrison, over by the Buffalo River country. And this goro supposedly was captured by a man named William Miller, who then photographed the beast. And then this drawing was made for the Arkansas Gazette newspaper, and a story ran in the Arkansas Gazette about Miller's adventure in capturing and killing the beast. And he then purportedly shipped the creature off to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian Institute supposedly put this creature, the goro, the Ozark goro, or in this case, a green goro, although I've only heard it called a goro. Supposedly this goro is in the Smithsonian's collection, but if you ask anybody that works at the Smithsonian, they can't find the hide or the body or the bones of this goro. So I don't know, but William Miller said he heard this strange sound coming from a crevice a hole in the ground. He was out hunting, and he heard this hissing sound, and he and his friends, he went and got some friends. They didn't know what they had encountered. So the friends took a rope and put an iron, you know, like an old piece of metal on it, and put the rope down in the hole to see if they could somehow rise this creature or whatever the noise they were hearing. And the rope was cut in two. The iron was cut off of the bit in two. Then they sent another rope down with a big rock tied on the end of it, and that was bitten off in two. And finally, they somehow managed to lure the creature out, and Miller managed to shoot and kill it. And you see how it's described. It's kind of like an alligator. It has a huge long tail, and at the end of its tail was like a sickle, which is a sharp knife. And that knife, it could whap its tail back and forth and cut to shreds anything in its path. It had webbed feet like a duck, but claws. So very much and these spiky things on its back, very much a cross between some kind of a dinosaur and an alligator, and maybe some farming implements, and a saber-toothed tiger. So that all these creatures were talked about to Vance Randolph by old timers in the Ozarks. They may still be out there today. When you go on a drive, I encourage you to remember these creatures. And this is a kind of a short program today, because I want you to, as soon as we're done, I want you to go out and start looking for these Ozark creatures. And I want you to keep in mind what they looked like according to Hiatt's vision, which I think is beautifully done. And I'm just, again, really impressed by the staying power of an Ozark folk tale, even just a description of a perhaps mythical Ozark creature. Who knows how they were seen 100 years ago, longer than that, stories handed down over and over. And in the year 2021, our young artist Hiatt Lowrey is keeping these fantastical Ozark critters alive and well for us to remember and enjoy. So I want to give a special thank you and shout out to Hiatt Westlake Lowrey for creating these pictures that we could look at today as we think about these fantastical Ozark creatures. Now, I don't know whether, should I stop? I'm open for your comments and suggestions. I know there are several people in the audience with deep Ozark roots. I would love to hear if you have any of hearing about creatures in your childhood. If I stop share, will that cut me off, Corey?
No, it shouldn't. Yeah, and y'all are welcome to share stories or ask questions in the chat, or if you're able to unmute yourself, you can do that to ask a question. I'm okay with that too. Are you guys able to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Oh, now I can see. Yeah, here's a good question from Pam. If William Miller photographed that Goro, why did he send a drawing? And that's an excellent question. My guess is that the newspaper in 1897 was better equipped to run a drawing instead of a photograph, just from a printer's aspect. So I don't know. But it's an excellent question, Pam. But also, yeah, I was going to say, just go with it. Just go with it. But an excellent question. Okay, the only creature, I'm trying to think of creatures that I grew up here. The only thing I could come up with was the booger man. I remember getting threatened by the booger man. Don't do that. Booger man's going to get you. So, and I kind of have a vision of what a booger man might have looked like, just some kind of like a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot kind of creature. Does anybody else grow up with a?
I think is it Sarah Beth?
Yeah.
Beth.
Could you shoot the picture of all of those again? So
Yeah.
if we had a question about one of them, because that second one, the whiffle bird, or maybe it was the
Hang on.
first one. Does
Oh,
it
let me
make,
go.
and you probably have already said this, but does it make a sound?
The wiffle bird, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
The wiffle bird, Randolph did not, he did not, no, none of his informants did not mention the fact of it making a sound, just that there were two schools of thought. Why did it fly backwards? Because it wanted to keep dust out of its eyes, or because he was more interested in where he had been than where he was going.
Okay.
I would ask Hiatt in the wiffle bird, which is the first picture up here, top left. Is that something trying to get the wiffle bird? They kind of look like sharks.
Yeah.
Cool. So in the Ozarks, that would be probably those big alligator gars, those really weird looking prehistoric fish.
Yes.
So if you see alligator gars, which, you know, you can see if you float the Buffalo River, you'll see them. If you see alligator gars, then you might be on the lookout for a wiffle bird, because it appears that a wiffle bird could be a preferred diet for the alligator gar.
Or it likes to taunt them.
Oh, they're taunting. Yes, yes.
If the gollywog wasn't just seen at night, I would think that I had seen one on the Kings River, because I've seen something really big under the water, kind of like an eel kind of thing. But it was
Cool.
daylight.
Well, you know, now I'm not saying there's exceptions to everything. So you might very well have seen a gollywog that just that ventured out in the daytime.
Yeah.
You might have seen a baby gollywog.
Baby gollywog.
Baby
There's also
gollywog.
those things called mud puppies. If you've ever seen a mud
Yeah.
puppy, they're kind of weird looking
Yeah.
amphibious creatures. What else? Pam Redfern, I'm sorry, I keep flipping. Did you not grow up with any hearing of any creatures? No?
Just the booger man.
The booger man, you and me, we're from the same neck of the woods. Is Lyle Sparkman still here?
Still
My
here.
folklorist friend Lyle, did you hear any tales of such monsters or creatures?
Yes, starting with a tamer version. My grandpa, Claude Johnson, asked, do you know what the bullfrogs are saying? And I said, no. He said, they're saying, Tom Moore, Tom Moore. He said, you know who Tom Moore is? And I said, no. He said, well, that's the biggest catfish there is. And anytime you get your line hung up, you haven't got yourself on a snag. That's just Tom Moore holding on to your line. Now, in terms of boogers, that goes to the other side of the scale. That goes into something scary. Do you
Okay.
want scary with this stuff?
Well, a little scary. Yeah, a little scary.
Okay, well, here goes. We'll talk about a booger dog story. A fellow that I know up in Sugar Creek happened to visit his grandparents, and he snuck out one night. Was going down by the moonlight and the creek and all that, big adventure for a young guy. And he looked up ahead and he saw what looked like two dark figures moving toward him. Well, his heart kind of jumped into his throat, and he started climbing a tree and got up to it. And the closer they got, the worse it looked, because they had tufty ears that went straight up and their eyes were red. And they were dark, and they came up, and as they're going by the tree, one of them stopped and put his paws on the trunk and looked up at this fellow. And then they both went trotting down the road piece. Well, Joe managed to get back, but he was powerful curious as to what he was encountering. So next time they went to the Saturday market there in the village nearby, he met up with the lady called the Blackberry Lady. Now, she was a mysterious older lady that always wore an old-fashioned bonnet and had a basket full of various herbs or yarbs, as she'd call it, for healing. And he went up and he told her what had happened to him. And he said, well, I don't know what happened. Why didn't they go after me and just move on? And she looked at him out of the corner of her eye under the bonnet and said, they weren't meant for you.
Whoa. Whoa, and that's mildly scary. I
Yeah,
don't want to hear what's really scary then.
I've got one of those, but I ain't telling it today.
Well, we need to get you, Corey Word, Lyle is an excellent folklorist, so I highly recommend him anytime you need a program. Lyle, I'm putting you out there.
All right, well, August 17th, 2022, you can see me at
That he-
Shiloh at noon.
That's right. That's right.
Then you can ask me if I know a really scary story.
There. Yeah, we'll let those who are brave enough to stay afterwards can hear your scary stories.
There you go.
What else? Anything else?
Well, that'll do for me.
Okay.
Susan,
Thank you, Lyle.
Hey, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cynthia in the chat room area has mentioned some of the Ozark that she's heard of, like Boogeyman and Hellbender, but the hoop snake is on there, and I wanted you to kind of give us a little information about the hoop snake, because I think it's very interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what I know, just off the top of my head, and you may have to chime in, or Paul or Lyle. What I know of the hoop snake is that it's the snake that will put its tail in its mouth and travel fast like that. But is it doing so to try to catch a human? Is that why it does that?
That's what
That's
I
really
thought.
all. Okay, who said that? Was that you,
Hey.
Cynthia? Pam, you've heard of the hoop snake?
Oh, good gosh, yes. Yes. They chase people.
But have you ever seen one in real life yourself?
No, I avoid them.
I'm not discounting it. I just want to know. I just want to meet somebody that's, really seen the thing. I'm not disbelieving you though.
My grandfather told me about it, and of course he's the one who fed me green persimmons. So you know how that goes.
Did he feed you the green persimmons and then tell you about the hoop snake?
No,
That's a
two different
memorable
times at least.
I sure would
Beth,
like
is
to
that-
see one.
I would love to see one. Is it Lyle? Do you know
One?
kind of like what?
I'd kind of like to be chased by one.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, and then there's another snake or snake story. There's lots of snake tales from the Ozarks, but there's snakes that will actually go up to a cow and get milk from the cow's teats. That they know how to do that. I've heard of that happening.
There's a coach whip that will whip you to death if it catches you.
Yeah, I've heard of a coach whip.
What else?
When we were growing up, of course, it wasn't exactly the Ozarks, but the kids used to always talk about a blue racer, like it was going to, like it would chase you.
Right.
Yeah, the blue racer snake.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been chased by one. They do chase you.
Corey, you have?
I have at my
And you-
house in Hot Springs. He fast. Scared the dog out of me.
What was it? A big snake?
I mean, yeah,
It's-
probably 3 or 4 feet long. I mean, he was a long snake. I don't know. He probably looked a lot bigger because he was chasing me, but my husband didn't believe me, but then he slithered around underneath the porch later and he saw him, and then he was like, oh, that's a racer snake. And I was like, I don't care what it is.
So he was so fast, he didn't even have to put his tail in his mouth and roll.
Yeah. Yeah, he scared me.
Racers are a thin black snake, kind of like the coach whip snake is.
Yeah.
They're a long, thin snake.
So
Okay.
the coach whip is a snake too.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to meet any of these. So.
Well,
being
I
chased by a
would,
racer.
yeah, I would say, just again, encourage all of y'all to get out, take a drive on one of the Ozark back roads, and keep in mind Hiatt's drawings, these beautiful images of fantastical Ozark creatures that you might encounter. I would say take water with you, take bug spray, maybe take a friend along with you, or tell someone where you're going, because you get out where these creatures live, you're not going to have cell phone service in some places. So just be safe as you're traveling, and also travel to your local library at your Fayetteville Public Library if you're living here in town, and enjoy all the wonderful resources your library has to offer. I want to say, while Hyatt's still here, a big thank you. Y'all, please help me in thanking Hiatt for his wonderful artwork and commentary. You know what? Hiatt did not know I was going to ask him to say anything about his artwork today. So Hiatt, thank you. I appreciate you very much helping me out with the program.
Thank you, Hiatt.
Thank you.
Hiatt.
Thanks.
Yeah. Susan, I have one question though, because Timotheo in the comments said that he had read a book called The Last of the Really Good Wang Doodles by Julie Andrews.
Mhm.
And, you know, Julie Andrews is English. And I was wondering if some of these creatures may have immigrated from some Scotch tales or
Absolutely.
from the Appalachians along with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great observation. I think especially the Goro, if you go back and read some fairy tales from the British Isles, you'll see the Goro. In fact, some have postulated that the Goro, that name actually comes from the word gower, Gower, which is got an Old English a derivation of that means like a spiky fence, alluding to the spikes on its back. So all that to say, absolutely yes, I think so many of our Ozark folk tales and traditions of all kinds, if you go back and study folkways in the Appalachians, certainly, because so many of our settlers, our Anglo settlers to the Ozarks, came from the mountains of Tennessee and Kentucky, and then you keep following them back to the British Isles and England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, you will see these creatures. And you will recognize a lot of the traditional ways of the old Ozark folks. So that's a very good observation. Thanks for that. And you know, Julie Andrews saw Wang Doodle, then that's enough for me. That's all the proof I need.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Susan. Are there any more questions before we end our call? And thank you so much, Hiatt. Those are wonderful drawings. Yeah. All right. Is there any more?
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all visiting with us today, and look forward to seeing you somewhere in the hills and hollers sometime soon.
Thank you.